By the time dessert arrived, my father had already told 3 people I was finally moving up, not promoted, not appointed regional director after 9 years with the company, moving up. Like everything before, this had been temporary. I noticed it every time he said it, though I pretended not to. The restaurant had private lighting and those heavy water glasses that made every table feel more important than it really was. Around 30 people had come, some from my department, a few executives. My boss had reserved the upstairs room after the announcement earlier that week. It should have felt uncomplicated. Instead, I spent most of the evening tracking my father's orbit around the room the way people monitor unstable weather. He meant well. That was always part of the problem. From across the table, he looked proud in the public sense of the word. Loud handshakes, too much smiling, repeating my title to strangers before they asked. But underneath it was the same current I had spent most of my adult life translating for other people. Comments about quotas disguised as observations. Suspicion toward programs he believed lowered standards. The habit of treating every achievement by someone unlike him as potentially assisted. Growing up, he called it realism. By 28, I called it exhaustion. Near the end of the night, my boss came over to our table carrying a drink and congratulated me again. He'd been one of the people who pushed hardest for my promotion, not because we were close personally, because during a brutal restructuring 2 years earlier, I had managed a client transition nobody else wanted and somehow kept 3 accounts from leaving the company entirely. We both knew exactly what this promotion had cost. My father smiled at him warmly. Then, casually, almost conversationally, he asked, "So tell me honestly, was this part of one of those diversity initiatives, or did she beat somebody out the normal way?" The room did not explode. That's what people misunderstand about moments like that. Silence is quieter and much crueler. My boss stopped moving first. 2 colleagues near the bar looked over immediately, then looked away too carefully. I was standing close enough to hear the ice settle inside my own glass. And my father was already halfway into a laugh, as though he had made an awkward but harmless joke. That was the worst part, not the insult, the normalcy. I set my drink down very carefully on the table behind me. My boss answered before I could. "No," he said evenly. "She earned this because she consistently outperformed senior staff for years." My father blinked. The boss continued, calm enough that everyone nearby kept listening. "She led our highest retention quarter during restructuring, built 2 of our largest client relationships from scratch, and frankly, half this room learned management from watching her." Nobody spoke. My father gave a short nod, smiling tightly now. "Right. Of course, didn't mean anything by it." But the atmosphere had already shifted, not dramatically, socially. The kind of shift you cannot reverse once people have witnessed it. For the rest of the evening, colleagues kept including me naturally in conversations. But something changed around my father. People became polite instead of warm, brief instead of engaged. And for the first time in my life, I did not step in to rescue him from that feeling. Usually I would have softened things, reframed his comments, explained generational differences, changed the subject before discomfort settled fully into the room. That night, I let silence do its work. On the drive home, he tried first. "You know how people are nowadays," he said, looking out the passenger window. "Everybody's waiting to be offended." I kept driving. "I was complimenting you, in a way." That almost interested me enough to respond. Instead, I asked quietly, "Do you know how many times I prepared people before introducing you?" He looked over. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I spent years translating you into someone safer." The car went silent after that. Not angry, just stripped down. A week later, he called asking whether I could help fast-track a proposal for a friend of his through one of our vendor channels. Normally, I would have found a way, stayed late, made calls, used goodwill carefully accumulated over years. Instead, I told him our procurement process required formal review and conflict screening. Professionally true, emotionally new. He paused long enough for both of us to understand what had changed. "You could probably influence it if you wanted," he said. "Probably," I answered. Then I let the silence sit there untouched. After that, our conversations became strangely cautious, not closer, more accurate. Months later, I spoke at an industry leadership panel downtown. About halfway through the presentation, I noticed my father sitting near the back row beside people he didn't know. He listened quietly the entire time, watched executives ask for my opinion, watched audience members take notes while I spoke, watched strangers trust my judgment without hesitation. Afterward, while people crowded around the stage area, he waited off to the side with his hands folded awkwardly in front of him. When I finally reached him, he nodded once. "You're good at this," he said. Not dramatic, not enough to repair everything. But it was the first sentence he had ever said about my work that contained no suspicion inside it. And standing there in that crowded hallway, I realized something uncomfortable. I no longer needed him to fully understand me. But I had spent most of my life hoping he eventually would.